Okay, so this should be the 7th video lecture on the topic of social psychology. And I would like to pick up where I left off and talk about, what did we talk about? Yeah, last time we were talking about obedience and conformity. It included a brief description of the Asher line experiment where people were asked to identify which line was longer and how people conformed. And then Milgram was that teacher-learner experiment, and the Stanford prison experiment, which all built on itself, or built the ideas just sort of built up on each other. That what were the conditions, and all the researchers concluded that it was not, people were not inherently bad, but that there were certain situations, certain situations that made people more or less likely to do bad things. Well, the research, interestingly enough, the research on helping behavior actually says much of the same thing. Not only are there certain situations that predict if somebody is likely to help or to do bad things, but there are also certain situations that say if people are likely to help, right? So pro-social behavior. Pro-social behavior is a fancy way of saying helping behavior. You're probably familiar with the term antisocial. Antisocial does not mean, in this case, it does not mean somebody that likes to hide out in their apartment, but the opposite of antisocial is prosocial. So you have behavior that helps another person, and then you have behavior that's antisocial, which harms another person. It doesn't really mean that you like to be with or you like to be apart. So I took a whole class in graduate school on pro-social behavior, the social, psychological dynamics of why do people help. And basically there are situational dynamics. Included in this section of the chapter lectures, there is a activity called to help or not, and then there's also a little video on there about the bystander effect. Basically, what that to help or not asks you is to consider some of those dimensions. So what we know about helping behavior is we are less likely to help when there are other people around. So what the bystander effect says is that when there are other people that could potentially offer help, we diffuse responsibility, here's that word, and we are less likely to help any particular individual when there are more people. So when you're in a crowded place and the old lady falls down, you probably, you're more likely to sort of let someone else or diffuse responsibility. So the quiz question, or I think it's a quiz question, that who's more likely to get help? The person who has a flat tire down the dirt road, right, the county road, or the person that has the flat tire down the interstate highway? And the answer is the person on the dirt road. Any single person traveling down that dirt road is more likely to offer help than any single person on the highway, because the highway drivers are going to diffuse responsibility to other highway drivers, right? Okay, so that's what it said. So this, explains that sort of cultural notion that people in rural places are friendlier and they're more helpful. That while that is kind of true, that people in rural places are probably more likely, any of those individuals are more likely to offer help than they are in the city, because there's simply fewer people there to potentially help. Right. Some of the other things that predict helping behavior is if it's clear. What does that one say right here? If it's clear that a person needs help, as opposed to can't really tell, if you know how to help. So if you know how to change a tire, you're more likely to stop and help her change a tire. If you don't know how to change a tire, you're less likely. So I say it feels good. If it's a situation where the risks to me are quite low, I'm more likely to help. If watching that person struggle is going to make me uncomfortable. So there's this really cool idea, and this will probably be where this may be I don't know, there's this really cool idea that says that one of the reasons that we offer help to people is because it reduces our psychic tension. So when I see the homeless person, right, standing on the side of the road, do you give them money? Well, I always give them money, right? And I don't give them food, I give them money. Because first of all, what they don't probably want food, they probably want money, right? So why would I give them something they don't want? I would not give my friend something my friend doesn't want, right? But there's also, it makes me uncomfortable. So if you ever, those commercials for ASPCA, you know, all the animal shelter commercials, and you see those suffering animals, that's supposed to make you uncomfortable, because it does right here. It creates a kind of psychic tension, and you want to reduce that tension, that discomfort of watching them suffer, so you give money, right? So a lot of times we help because it's really uncomfortable not to give help. So that raises the question, is there such thing as altruism? Altruism is the notion that we help people for no expected return. So we just do nice things because, but we don't expect gratitude, we don't expect anything in return. And within the discipline of social psychology, there's some who argue that there's no such thing, that there's no such thing as altruism, that everything that we do whenever we help someone, we actually get something from it. And to me, that makes a lot of sense, because even when I do something for someone else and I don't expect them to say thank you, I do feel better. And if I didn't feel better, I probably wouldn't do it. So that begs the question, is there really such thing as doing a nice thing without some sort of return? If I didn't feel anything about helping, I probably wouldn't help. Right. And so the last assignment, this is the last assignment that I have associated with this chapter, asks you to do a random act of kindness and consider that. Consider, like, did you get anything for it? Even if the person didn't say thank you, even if it was completely secret, I bet you got something. You got some sort of, like, you know, psychic kick or jolly, or just knowing that you've done something nice. Right. So anyway, so that's what this list is about. So you know how to help. It's clear that the other person needs help. You believe, this is another really important one, right? This one right here, perceiving a person deserves help. That speaks to, is the world just? Is the world just? And forgot the other one. But because if this person needs help, and they didn't bring upon them help, then they didn't bring upon the situation themselves, we're more likely to help them. If, on the other hand, the problem they're in, they did it to themselves, then we're not really likely to help them. I think that was the other. Blah, blah, blah. And then the bystander effect. And there's a little video on research on the bystander effect. This simply illustrates that what bystanders do is they create a social norm. And once, this one speaks to that Asher line experiment, once someone offers person help, then that creates a new group and more people will offer them help. So once the person says that the 2 + 2 = 4, more people are likely to follow. But we're not going to be the first one. We're going to diffuse that responsibility to somebody else. Some other terms here that are associated with social psychology and group behavior, a couple of them that you might be familiar with. So social striving or social loafing, let's start with this one. When we're in a group together, and I might make a discussion post about this, I would ask students, do you like to help work in groups? And most students will say no, they don't like to work in groups. And then when you ask them why, we don't like to work in groups because, well, someone always ends up doing more than their fair share. And that's what we mean by social loafing. Social loafing is a phenomena of an individualistic culture like ours, and that is when we work in groups, we work less hard. When I get to share the labor with everybody else, I'm actually going to do less work than if I have to do it all by myself. So we loaf in groups. In other cultures, in collectivist cultures, like the Amish or even Asian cultures, their experience is the opposite. It's something called social striving. Social striving is when we work as a group, we actually work harder. In the Amish tradition, which I just am fascinated by the Amish, where it's considered inappropriate to draw attention to yourself, right? I wouldn't work hard by myself because then I might draw attention to myself and that's inappropriate. I will work hard in the group because the group will get attention and will get credit, but I'm not going to do anything where I'm individually going to get credit. And that's what's referred to as social striving. Social facilitation is great if you're a performer or an athlete, and that simply means that you perform better when someone is watching, right? I remember when my daughter was in gymnastics, this would happen a lot. She couldn't get a skill in practice, but lo and behold, she'd go to a meet and she'd get it. That's social facilitation. De-individuation is simply when, so in the one video where you saw about the Stanford prison experiment, he talks about wearing the glasses. That's an example of de-individuation. If you don't have a name, if you only have a number, if you can hide behind a mask, we will act different. It's sort of also what we talk about with social media, how people will be critical and hateful when they don't have a real identity. Would you say these same things if you had to say them face to face, right? The de-individuation. Group polarization is something that we see a lot in juries. So people will, in juries, that they will all they'll all have sort of say a medium. They'll all feel like they're on a medium, but when the group gets together, now they're all high, right? So their attitudes will become more extreme when we bring people together. And it's like the group, like, I don't know, like breeds on itself, or I don't know, but the group actually causes people's feelings to become stronger. Groupthink, the best example I have of groupthink used to happen all the time when I had face-to-face classes, but I would walk up to my classroom and 5 minutes before class and everybody would be standing outside the classroom door. And I'd say, did anyone try to see if the door was unlocked? And they'd say, no, he was just standing here when I got here. So groupthink is when the whole group stands in line to nothing. We haven't been in groups in a long time, but once upon a time when you used to go to the movie theater and you'd think you were getting in line to the tickets, right? And come to find out there was a line to nothing. So in my classroom example, nobody would bother to see if the door was unlocked, and it would happen to be unlocked, right? Groupthink is when everybody just does what the group is doing. We all just are heading down, we're all just standing here at this exit sign and don't know where it's going instead of figuring out where it's going. An example of groupthink on Kansas highways is when you're coming up in a construction zone, and there's something called, what's it called? It's called zipper merging. And in other states, they actually encourage people to zipper merge. But in the state of Kansas, when the exit is, when the single lane construction zone is a mile up the road, everybody will get in. They'll be 3 miles down the road in one lane, even though it's like a mile up the road. And so in some states, they actually have the Kansas Department of Transportation started a educational campaign, and they said, how about you guys in the back of that line, you come up here and you zipper merge. But that's groupthink, because it doesn't make any sense to all get in one great big long line when you actually have two. It's a digression. And then group cohesiveness. And group cohesiveness is just a fancy word for when we all hang out in a group, we all have a tendency to like each other simply because we're in a group, right? Oh, I just watched something about that, how quickly that happens, that groups will develop a sense of identity simply because, and it was an experiment where they made arbitrary group assignments, but simply like they took a people at a conference room and they broke them up, and you guys are orange and you guys are blue and you guys are yellow, and very quickly you developed this identity of being the orange group, even though it was based on nothing. It was just based on something completely arbitrary, like color. Okay, and then I'm getting over my time limit here, but this is just a quick slide about persuasion, and basically there are rules of persuasion. And if you're going to political science or retail, you'll probably learn about some of these. The rule of reciprocity. So if you get those little address stickers in the mail and they want you to send back $5, that's based on the rule of reciprocity, that somehow we will feel this compulsion, this sense of guilt that they gave me something and I didn't give anything back, right? That's what gift giving is based on, this rules of reciprocity, that you give me something and I give you something. Then you've got something called, rules of commitment. And this simply is what AT&T does when you want to call and turn off your service and they try to upsell you, right? You're already committed to AT&T, so why don't I offer you something better? And then some of the ways that you can deal with this sort of when they're trying to sell you all the time is just wait and do nothing, what they call sleep on it. If you ever think that, if you're ever inclined to be pressured, just say no. And one of the things I've learned with Retail, sometimes you have to say it 3 times. So I started to say, like when I had to call AT&T and turn them off, I said, no, I want to be turned off. And I said, no, I want to be turned off. I said, if I have to say it 3 times, I've said it 3 times. And if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Okay, this ends the chapter on social psychology. Thank you for listening.